Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Well, we know we should be eating properly and we should be getting exercise. These are all things that you've known probably since you were a kid. Easier said than done, especially when it comes to the nutrition. How do you select the right things to eat? And I don't want to say, how do you plan a diet? Because that word is such a negative. A lot of times it conjures up negativity and failure right after that. How do we make those modifications in our lifestyle, what we eat, to really address the concerns of our health? We're going to talk about that today with somebody that helps people with that all the time, especially those who are retired military women and their families. She is one herself, and she's back with us. Coach Lorraine joins us on the program. Hi, Lorraine. How are you?
Hello, Steve. I'm doing great. And yourself?
I'm good. Thank you. Yeah. This whole thing we're going to talk about today, it's a challenge for me. I am trying to get back on track in terms of eating well. I turn to the left right now, and I can see a salad that I have with me. Put some chicken in there. It's going to be healthy. Going to try and stick to that today, and not add anything that's unhealthy to that. But even going to the food store, I just do laps around the place. Should I get this? Should I get that? What if I try this? A lot of times things spoil in the refrigerator because I don't get to them. I have, lofty goals. Where do we start with all of this in terms of improving our nutrition?
All right, that's a great question, Steve. And I think you're off for a great start, because one of the first things we need to look at is whole, healthy food. And one big thing we need to bear in mind with our bodies is that our bodies are constantly trying to stay in some form of in homeostasis, a status of equilibrium. And the food and the environment that we have around us and put in us plays a big part with that. And if we're not having the right foods in the right combinations, then we're setting ourselves for failure. So one of the things to really consider is the foods that we eat, what we select. How nutritionally dense are these foods? Are we going to put ourselves in a situation where we're going to have to keep going back for more and more and more because the nutrients that we need is not there? And that's one of the situations we fall into on a day-to-day basis, looking at the advertising and different things and thinking that what we see is what we need and not really digging deep into this.
I know that people get challenged when it comes to what they should be eating, because once you say, you got to cut back on that, you got to cut back on this, right away, it's like, oh, God, great, fantastic, I can't eat that anymore. And when you work with somebody, do you come up with alternatives to what people like? Do you actually come up with foods that they should be eating, or you just direct them so that they can make that choice themselves?
I pretty much have them make the choice themselves based on their genetic makeup, based on their taste, because someone who's a vegan can do just as well as someone who is a carnivore, which is on the other extreme. When it comes for someone on a carnivore diet, for example, the best choices for them are grass-fed meats, because with grass-fed meats, the nutrient, the bio-makeup of that meat has more nutrient density than a cow, let me say, who's fed corn or just something that's not necessarily bioavailable to us. Someone who is a vegan or vegetarian, they can get the same benefits. The only thing is they may have to eat more of these items themselves. So it's a matter of directing people to what suits them, and they will be comfortable with sticking to.
So I have challenges with protein. I want to make sure I get enough of my diet because I just feel better. It carries me through the day longer than, let's say, carbs. And I just feel run down if I don't have protein. So, okay, right away, we pivot over to some kind of meat source. What are some sources of protein that aren't meat? But pretty substantial sources of protein, because I'd be happy to cut back on some of the meat if I could find something that works.
That's a tricky one. So, for the most part, we all know that soy, different types of beans are high in protein. Our leafy green vegetables are high in protein. But the quantities that you need, of course, won't compare to the quantities that you get out of a meat source. So people who like lentil beans, kidney beans, any type of beans is a good source of protein. For myself, beans and myself, we don't get along very well, not in the public space anyway.
I gotcha.
So I tend to lean towards the meat where that's concerned. And even with meats, you still have to look at the different types of meat, whether it's beef, pork, chicken, fish, or any other type of animal-based diet. Dairy is good for some people who do tolerate dairy, and raw milk, for example, is better than having the traditional milk that's in the store. And of course, staying away from the 2% and the low-fat milk, that's a no-no. So if you are going to drink
let's go
milk,
there. Let's go there, please,
Okay.
please. Okay. When you're in the grocery store, and I don't drink a lot of milk, if ever. Okay. But I pick it up for my daughter. She likes it on cereal and stuff. What is the difference between the 2%, the whole, the 1%, all of that? I heard it's very similar anyway.
So the difference is once you remove the fat from milk, your body, what you're exposing all the sugar. There is lactose, basically. It's a form of or lactate. It's a form of sugar in dairy, period. Okay. But without the fat to kind of damper how your body breaks it down, it's going to turn to sugar, into glucose, in a very short period of time. So your body's going to consume it. Your insulin goes up, your inflammation goes up, everything goes out the roof because you're drinking or eating dairy that has no fat. So that's the key thing. When you drink whole milk, you consume cheese that is made from whole milk, it is more sustaining, and you won't have those fluctuations in increased insulin or glucose as you would with the low-fat items.
Okay, so let me make sure I heard that clear. You're saying it's better to drink whole milk?
Yes, it is.
Wow. Interesting.
The biggest thing is to recognize this. Do not fear fat. Should you watch how much fat you consume? Yes, you should be mindful of it. But don't fear fat. Because if we start fearing fat, now we're going back to Ansel Keys and his test that he did back in the 60s, was it? Mm-hmm. I think it was.
Yep.
Where that has been proven to be false, because Ansel Keys, when he did his research, he actually researched 21 countries, but he cherry-picked 7 of the countries just to substantiate his research. So what happened to the other 14 countries? It just didn't fit into the reporting that he needed to get the entire world at this point, right, away from eating saturated fats.
Well, I also truly believe it was a marketing thing too, because
that too.
Right away when you see low fat, oh, healthier, that's better for me. Yeah, that's great, that's good. Same thing with I don't know who did it, but when they started panning meat as a bad thing, I don't know if it was farmers that did that back in the day, and we had this thing, fat, meat, cholesterol, fat, bad, but not necessarily the case if you make that decision to have meat, like you're saying, grass-fed sources of meat. That is one way to make that better. All right, wow, interesting. I will be picking up whole milk later today. Not even kidding.
Very good.
The stuff you learn.
And the whole notion of grass-fed meat is better for us. Yes, it's higher cost. It doesn't mean that regular meat isn't appropriate, because you can buy our regular on-the-shelf meat. It's just not the best. It will have the nutrient density that we need. There may be some nutrients that are missing, and you kind of have to look at the sources. And then when you do your every now and then your blood tests, is to identify what deficiencies you potentially may have and make it up in some form of supplement. But yeah, we all can't have the grass-fed. We don't have a grass-fed meat budget. So look at other sources that you can explore to satisfy your
Sure.
appetite.
All right, let's go over to fruits and vegetables. Lots of stuff to talk about there. I don't even know where to begin. Where would you like to?
All right. So when it comes to fruits and vegetables, so one thing to be mindful is do not drink your fruit, eat your fruit. So and this is something my brother and I, we go back and forth. My dad and my brother, they love making fruit juices. But if you think about the amount of fructose, which is sugar, that you're consuming in a beverage, that is a no-no. Because one orange is probably about a couple, let's say 5 spoons of sugar. So now when you juice your oranges, now you're having like 4 or 5 oranges in one glass. So now you're having 20 to 24 teaspoons of sugar. Right. So you're adding on to a situation and not being mindful of everything that you're doing. Now, if you do decide to drink your fruit, then you're going to have to think about, give some thought, I should say, to the rest of carbohydrates that you consume throughout the day. But if you stay away from juicing your fruit or drinking fruit juices and just drink healthy water, you're in a better place. And just eat a small bowl of fruit salad or one fruit, for example. But most fruits, the best fruits for our diet that won't spike our insulin are our berries, blackberries, strawberries, and things along those. Strawberries are not necessarily the highest on the list, but fruits of those kinds are less likely to spike our insulin, less likely to run us into inflammation, and things of that nature.
I want to share this because I learned it, and you probably know it, but bananas. Always heard that they have the highest glycemic index, so the most sugar of any fruit. That's what I've heard, and it varies in terms of the amount depending on the ripeness. So if you have a banana that's a little bit green, not going to have as much sugar in it. But if you wait till it's starting to turn brown, then the sugar content is going to be substantially higher. Have you heard that?
Well, that is true. That is true. And having lived in the Caribbean, I can attest to that. Yes, because a green plantain or a green banana is high in carbs, but not necessarily more like a resistant starch. So our bodies basically digest that a lot better. But the riper it becomes, the plant actually has already started to break down the carbohydrates into its simplest form of sugar, which is fructose, or glucose for that matter. So yes, the riper the fruit, the sweeter it is, the more bioavailable the sugar is to our bodies, and it will spike our system. So as far as bananas being one of the highest, it depends on when you eat banana. Yes, it can be the higher glycemic index, and then it may not be. So one of the great things with bananas is if you're putting it in a smoothie, so you're mixing with a whole milk or something of that with peanut butter, then now you're making it more beneficial to you as to necessarily eating the bare fruit. But bananas, like even adding it into, if you're someone who does oats, for example, I don't necessarily do oats as I used to, but adding a couple slices of bananas to the oats, that's manageable. So it's a matter of maybe not doing it on a regular basis, but every now and then it suits you just fine.
Let's talk about that. Overnight oats. What can you tell me? There's a store that, I'll call it, has more healthier choices, at least it seems to be, near me. And I picked up overnight oats, and delicious, the stuff that's added to it. I'm hoping it's fairly healthy, but any insight on that?
Well, overnight oats, that's a good replacement for like a breakfast meal type of thing, to break your fast. But you have to be mindful of what type of oats they're using to make the overnight oats. Steel-cut oats is always the best because it doesn't break down in your system as well. It's not instant. Any kind of instant or quick oats, they've already started the process. It becomes an overly processed product that's not necessarily good for you. You want something that's going to be sustaining, that's going to take a longer time for your system to break down, almost like resistant starches, so that it'll sustain in your system and won't convert to sugar in the short term. But it is a pretty good product.
Gotcha. What do you think about buying frozen fruit as opposed to buying fresh fruit?
It's frozen food is pretty good. I mean, there's nothing. It's not processed, so it's a fine in the right combination.
So that's what I heard, that it might be better many times, because when you buy fresh fruit, let's factor out going to your local farm stand. I'm talking about going to the grocery store, buying it. It is, you don't know how long it's been since it was picked. They had to travel, they had to bring it to market, all of that stuff. But I hear that when you buy frozen fruit, that it's fast frozen typically, and it can be better for you. And I find it's cheaper. Like, I love cherries, and in the last year and such, they've been very expensive. So I kind of lean off on that. But what would be, let's say, $10 worth, I got almost double that buying it frozen, and it was delicious. Like, oh, so good. Just I throw it in the microwave for 20 seconds, and I'm good to go. I just think maybe it's a reasonable choice. I don't know.
It's a reasonable choice, but don't let the packaging fool you, Steve.
Yeah, here's what I need to do. I need Coach Lorraine. I need to text her everything I buy before I put it in my mouth. Is this good? How about this?
Oh gosh, I mean, the thing is, there are instances where and you have to read the label no matter what you do. So there's some frozen fruits, but they soak in syrup or in water, in sugar water, before they even freeze them. So you've got to be mindful of the source of where these items come from, because the companies that package the fruit, they're not necessarily the ones who farmed it.
Right.
So it's not coming straight from the farmer. So it basically might have been picked and out there for, I'm not sure what period of time, because I'm not familiar with that industry, before they actually got it to where it needed to be cut and frozen. So you never really know what you're purchasing when it comes to canned or frozen vegetables and fruits. It's always best, when possible, to buy from your local farmer, because you know exactly that it came from across the street or a couple blocks down the road or something of that nature. So when possible, go to your local farmer, Trader Joe's, and I think some other stores similar to Trader Joe's tend to buy from local farmers as opposed to big business. So the local farmers is the way to go when possible.
Gotcha. Learning a lot here today. Any other thoughts in terms of food and what we should be eating or should not be eating?
So, as I was saying before, as far as nutrient-dense foods, one thing to be in mind, we can take the time and the energy and fill ourselves up on carbs, breads, rice, and things of that nature. But when you look at the nutrient breakdown of these things, there is not much nutrients. It's just filling, but not nutritious. If you focus on nutrient-dense foods, your fruits, your vegetables, your meats, your fish, and things of that nature, and consume those in the right amounts, you will be satiated, and you won't get as hungry to have to be chasing down the next meal. So the more you fill your plate, like I said, with rice and carbs and pasta, you're just filling yourself up, but not satisfying the satiety of your body's needs. So pay attention to, in terms of, like I said, leafy green vegetables, or meats, fruits, and not fruits that are necessarily high in sugar, but things that are going to really sustain you, give you that satiety, and adding in appropriate fats.
What I'm getting from you is the ultimate best choice in terms of what we're eating is something that fills you up, makes you feel like you've eaten something and substantial, but also you're getting the nutrients at the same time. Does that sound right?
That's pretty much in a nutshell. But not necessarily feel you wanted to eat. When you do sit to eat, hopefully if you're not someone who, if you're eating the right foods, you don't get fatigued. it might mean that you're eating the wrong combination of foods. But there are times when eating to satiety is appropriate, so that you're not chasing the next meal as we tend to do. It's 3 o'clock. I need to eat my lunch. It's 2 o'clock. No. Eat when you're hungry, because that's the way to go.
Well, it's interesting. Many of us, our stomachs are on schedules. So, which I don't know if that's a bad thing or not. We don't get to, okay, it's 12 o'clock. I've got a half hour for lunch here at work, and I'm hungry again. I guess that's a good thing, because that's the time you have available when you feel like you're hungry. But you know what? Are you really hungry? I wonder.
Are you really hungry? That's a good question. And most often we're not. It's just that schedule and routine that we're accustomed to satisfying.
Right. Yeah. When somebody works with you, how does it work? Do you hear their story, hear their likes, hear their dislikes when it comes to food, hear their goals, and then kind of design something from there?
So someone will reach out to me, and we try to identify what's going on with them and what would they like to address, and we take things from that direction. It's everyone being different, and nothing is tailored across the board for any one person. Identifying their preferences and kind of working with them to tailor the right meals, right way of eating for that individual.
Final question here. You mentioned, I think it was nuts before. Are they good for you, and what kind should you be eating?
So it depends on who you are. So some nuts, some people can manage cashews, for example, but cashews high in carbs compared to almonds.
What? I didn't know that, and I just assumed that most nuts are low in carbs and protein and fiber. Wow. Okay.
No. Cashews are higher. Of all the nuts, cashew is high in carbs. It's one of the most nutritious and high in fat, but not necessarily the best. So it all depends on where you are on the metabolic spectrum. But nuts within itself can be a healthy snack.
If you want to get a good baseline for what you should be eating in terms of what's going on in your body right now, what do you ask your doctor for when it comes to a lab test? Is there something specifically you should be saying?
So depending on your age and everything else, one of the things is having a artery scan accomplished to see what's been going on internally, to see what you need to cut back on. Cholesterol is not necessarily a bad thing, but some people have high cholesterol and they do just fine. So, checking on your A1C and other things along those nature. So doing a full metabolic panel is one of the first things that we should try to look at.
I gotcha. Great talking with you. I learned a lot. Picking up whole milk tonight. And I was going to get it anyway, but now I know what I should be getting over the other choices. Lorraine, how do we find you? Best way to reach out to you if somebody wants to start making some changes?
All right. Best way to reach out to me is on lorrainecuff.com. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook. And you can book an appointment at any time. We'll do a free consultation and see where we can work together.
Always a pleasure talking with you. I truly appreciate your knowledge, but also that you get right to it. Here's a question, here's an answer, or here's a suggestion, and it's fantastic. Thank you so much for being here today.
You're welcome, Steve. You have a great one.
You too. We'll be right back.